Hey everybody, welcome back to Go Read Some Comics with me, Professor Jenna. I have been waiting for 7 months to say these words. The first trailer for Fantastic Four First Steps is officially here. After years of hoping that this movie would be a 60s period piece, and after all of the highs and lows and ultimate excitement of the casting announcement, I've had a feeling that this movie is just going to be really special. I was lucky enough to see the first test footage with my own eyeballs at San Diego Comic-Con in D23 last year, and I'm so glad that now everyone else can join the party. This trailer is a really interesting mix of what was in that test footage and entirely new stuff, and there's a lot to break down, so let's dive in. First, I need to address the trailer rollout itself. I love the idea of the countdown and using the actual space center and building hype like an actual space launch, and I do think Marvel needs these kinds of big trailer events on YouTube in the future, instead of expecting people to frantically refresh for the trailer on multiple platforms. That being said, I am not a morning person, and it was a very interesting stunt to pull after so many of us had already woken up early for the start of the stream. I could honestly barely sleep the night before because I was worried I would oversleep and miss it, but luckily the euphoria of everything and 2 coffees are getting me through the day. The stream and the trailer gave us even more crumbs for the Future Foundation, which is the organization that Reed spearheads in the comics to use science and technology to better the world. It's actually a pretty new invention created by Jonathan Hickman and Steve Epting in 2010's Fantastic Four number 579, and it eventually births a ragtag team of young heroes, including Spider-Man. It's actually the origin of the white suit that we're seeing in your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man right now. The movie's use of it seems to be much more of a straightforward science and technology company, but I love the idea of retrofitting it into this 60s era and aesthetic. Director Matt Shakman has said that he's taking inspiration from every FF comic up until the current ongoing run, so it's wonderful to see all these decades of lore kind of combined together. The trailer opens with the Baxter Building, which looks suspiciously like this Earth's version of Avengers Tower. In the comics, it actually has a much wider design and is actually the former home of a paper plant. In some comics, the FF own the entire building, while in others, they only rent out the top 5 floors. They've even had to deal with nagging landlords, Walter Collins in the comics and the absolute diva Lavinia Forbes in the 90s animated series. I am very curious about the use of aspect ratios in this movie and what they're subconsciously going to tell us about the FF's public and private personas. Nearly all of the test footage that shows up in this trailer is repurposed as newsreels or interviews, and I feel like there's going to be a through line of the group wanting to keep up appearances, but going through some things emotionally. Since their inception, part of what has made the FF so rare in the superhero space is that they are public-facing superheroes who are largely adored by the civilians of the world. We're already seeing that in spades in the marketing, down to the children wearing the Thing masks, and it feels like something that will be so fresh compared to both the previous movie incarnations and the sacred timeline of the MCU, where we're told that these characters are supposedly household names, but we barely get to see it. Look at Herbie. Just look at him. Herbie was originally created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee as Jack's very last work for Marvel, might I add, for the new Fantastic Four animated series, serving as the team's 4th member instead of Johnny. He then joined the comics with the help of Marv Wolfman and John Byrne in 1979's Fantastic Four number 209. The urban legend for decades was that Herbie replaced Johnny so kids wouldn't be inspired to accidentally set themselves on fire, but that has since been debunked. In actuality, it was because there were plans for a Human Torch solo film, which ultimately never came to fruition. Herbie is co-created by Reed and the Nova Corps to help find Galactus, a job that he's not super great at, and ultimately finds a home as the robot assistant and babysitter for the FF family. Herbie did technically appear in the extended edition of the 2005 movie, but I'm so glad that we're seeing him more prominently here. I am going to be curious if he's just going to be constrained to beeps and boops, or if we'll eventually have a voice for him as some sort of upgrade for Reed, because I am still holding on to my theory that that voice will ultimately be Natasha Lyonne. Ben looks so perfect, it legitimately makes me emotional. I've felt this way since seeing the test footage and since seeing the set photos, but getting to see him fully realized is just so special. I can wax poetic for hours about Ben and his significance, both in the Marvel Universe and in the career and life of Jack Kirby. His full name is borrowed from Jack's family, with Benjamin being borrowed from Jack's father, and his middle name of Jacob coming from Jack himself. The fictional neighborhood of Yancey Street, which I believe that we briefly see in this trailer, is modeled after Jack's childhood on Manhattan's Delancey Street. Jack drew Ben into his personal holiday cards and openly expressed his love for the character, and as he explained in a 1992 interview with Prisoners of Gravity,
the Thing was really myself. If you'll notice the way the Thing talks and acts, you'll find that the Thing is really Jack Kirby. He has my manners. He has my manner of speech. He thinks the way I do. He's excitable. You'll find that he's very, very active among people, and he can muscle his way through a crowd. And I find that I'm I'm that sort of person.
Ben's physique and his eyebrows look ripped right out of Jack's art in a way that I honestly never expected we could fully see on screen in this big budget, massive way. And honestly, I love the choice not to modulate his voice compared to the previous live action incarnations, because I feel like it really gets to the tragedy of Ben's transformation and his insecurities and his desire to be normal. Also, the clapping sound effect is brilliant. I don't mind that we don't see Reed's stretchy powers in the trailer because we still get so much of an essence of who he is, and I just know Pedro is going to crush it. Also, he appears to be sketching designs for a multiversal tunnel, which is definitely interesting with Doomsday and Secret Wars on the horizon. I mentioned Yancey Street earlier, and it's already confirmed on the map that they gave to attendees at San Diego Comic-Con, but let me dive into it a little bit more. Yancey Street is Ben's working class hometown neighborhood in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It's also home to the Yancey Street Gang, a group of punks who, largely from the margins, give Ben crap for his fancy new life as a superhero. This often includes playing pranks on him and literally throwing lettuce at his head. If this is them, I love that the first glimpse we get is also shrouded in mystery. I also love that we get Ben in his iconic disguise of the hat and trench coat. There's a jack-o'-lantern on the stoop in front of him as he's staring at the TV, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is on Halloween or near Halloween and he feels like he can go out in public and just be mistaken for a guy in a costume, which honestly just breaks my heart. The effects of Johnny's powers look great, and I love the detail of it literally creating residue on the camera. I am glad that they already showed off his Golden Age inspired Human Torch design on the earlier poster because it would be a little hard to kind of tell otherwise. Sue's powers. I love the choice to make it look bioluminescent instead of just being purely invisible. It's going to translate so beautifully on screen and make her stand out both within the FF and in the gigantic fight scenes we're probably going to get in the next two Avengers movies. Also, my fiance pointed out that this scene could be them fighting Giganto from their very, very first issue. If that happens, I will ascend out of my body. I really, really love that Sue and her relationships with everyone are at the heart of this trailer. It feels so necessary and so true to the team's dynamic in the comics while also being so different from the previous movies. As I said in my recent video about Marvel Rivals, I feel like the cultural dichotomy of Sue is either Jessica Alba or 1950s housewife, and I love that we're going to get to see more nuance within that. Also, their romance is going to change lives. We very briefly see the Fantastic Car functioning as an actual car. It was created by Jack and Stan in Fantastic Four #3 as the team's flying vehicle, which can split apart into separate pods if they need to go on their own missions. Ever since the car design was revealed at San Diego, I've had a feeling that that isn't going to exactly translate, but I am so excited to see what it looks like in flight and all of the bells and whistles that it has. We get our first look at John Malkovich as, I'm hoping, the villain Red Ghost. He was created by Jack and Stan in 1963's Fantastic Four #13. In the comics, he is a Soviet-era mad scientist with intangibility powers, hence the ghost part of his name. He hopes to get Russia to the moon, and he controls and abuses a trio of monkeys as his underlings. He repeatedly tries and fails to get to the moon, get stronger superpowers for himself and his monkeys, and fight the Fantastic Four. He also becomes a member of the Intelligentsia, not the incel group that we saw in She-Hulk, but a supervillain team that's led by MODOK and the leader. If this is him, I doubt we're going to get that far of a storyline, but his appearance would be a really interesting foil to the origin of the Fantastic Four that we already know. He's one of those characters that general audiences probably don't even know exist, but he definitely fits the movie's retro science aesthetic. Plus, I really, really want to see super monkeys. Of course, we get new looks at Galactus in shots that are completely different and a little more mysterious than what was in the teaser footage. Created by Jack and Stan in 1966 Fantastic Four #48, Galactus is a massive cosmic being named Galan, who is cursed with traversing the cosmos and literally eating worlds to satiate his hunger. He is accompanied by his herald, the Silver Surfer, who inspects the planet to determine its fate. I feel a little silly even explaining him because you probably know of him already, either through comics or animation or Fortnite or his daughter being in Marvel Rivals or him being a fart cloud. He essentially revolutionized the potential that a comic book villain could have. As Jack explained in a 1987 book, quote, "My inspirations were the fact that I had to make sales and come up with characters that were no longer stereotypes. In other words, I couldn't depend on gangsters. I had to get something new. For some reason, I went to the Bible and came up with Galactus. And there I was in front of this tremendous figure who I knew very well because I've always felt him. I certainly couldn't treat him in the same way that I could any ordinary mortal. And I remember in my first story, I had to back away from him to resolve that story. The Silver Surfer is, of course, the fallen angel. When Galactus relegated him to Earth, he stayed on Earth, and that was the beginning of his adventures. They were figures that had never been used before in comics. They were above mythic figures, and of course, they were the first gods. In the years since being introduced, Galactus' significance in the Marvel Universe has only grown. He now canonically predates the Big Bang, and his planet-eating abilities have a very meta context in maintaining Marvel's continuity. His presence in this movie both excites and scares me. I know Ralph Ineson is going to do an incredible job, especially after seeing him in Nosferatu, but he's definitely not helping the theories that the FF's world will ultimately be destroyed, pushing them towards the Sacred Timeline and Doomsday and Secret Wars. Update: while I was editing this video together, the official synopsis for the movie was released, and it ends with the sentence, "And if Galactus' plan to devour the entire planet and everyone on it weren't bad enough, it suddenly gets very personal." This is interesting given the fact that in the alternate Earth X storyline, Reed and Sue's son Franklin Richards actually becomes Galactus. Earth X has already been on people's minds in the lead up to this movie because it's the book where Shia Ball is canonically the Silver Surfer, much like Julia Garner will be in the movie. So I'm very curious if that family element is ultimately baked in, or if there's some other reason for their beef. The homage to the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in the ending shot is just chef's kiss. It furthers the notion of them being in-universe celebrities, and it actually carries a weird symbiotic relationship that both groups have had in the comics. Strange Tales 130 shows Ben and Johnny going to very great lengths to attend a Beatles concert, and Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross's Marvels revealed that the group canonically attended Sue and Reed's wedding. Overall, despite the chaos of the morning, I loved this teaser. It was a genuine teaser. There's a lot that we didn't get to see. I'm shocked there wasn't even a glimpse of Shia LaBeouf as the Silver Surfer, but we still have 6 months to go. And I feel like this footage accomplished so much in reintroducing the team and their world, and the fact that this won't be a typical MCU movie. I am going to be so insufferable in July of this year, and I can't wait. Definitely expect more FF related videos from me if you want to know more about specific comics that you should read, or even specific movies from the 50s and 60s that fit the general vibe of this. I've kept a running list on Letterboxd since San Diego, and I can definitely share that with the world. What did you think of the Fantastic Four trailer? Do you have a favorite moment or Easter egg? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends if you haven't already done so. If you want to hear me yap even more about this trailer, we did a very, very early reaction episode of my podcast Phase Hero, talking all about it, and it is now live on YouTube and on podcast platforms. As always, you can find me on social media at Hey It's Jenna Lynn. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, go read some comics.